Alright you guys, so this is just going to be a video covering alternative tuning options for Cobb, how this affects you, if it even affects you, because a lot of the stuff that Cobb just released doesn't affect as many people as they think it does, and I think a lot of people are misinterpreting what exactly is going on with this. Now let me first start off by saying I think the way that Cobb went about announcing how they were getting rid of a lot of the features in this is completely fooked. I think the whole flex fuel kit thing is complete trash on Cobb's end and how they went about that. They should not have continued to sell flex fuel kits for as long as they did, knowing that they were going to be removing these features. Now I'm not here to defend Cobb or anything like that, but keep in mind Cobb also is under extreme pressure from the EPA and all of those things, so we all kind of had a feeling this was coming, but it would have been nice to at least get like a 60-day or 30-day notice prior to Cobb dropping this announcement, everyone, instead of it being on the day of that they're making these changes. Now some tuners from the day I'm making this video do have a 2-week grace period for what they are allowed to tune with on these access ports still using the old program. It is all dependent on what software they were using when the latest update went out. If they didn't have whatever software Cobb was still allowing people to use, they don't have the 2-week grace period. So some tuners may have it, some tuners may not have it. Now, I've got a whole list here of things. Now some people are freaking out about what exactly is going on with this Cobb thing, and it doesn't really affect them. If you are just using an access port, this is still a good tool to use to tune if you now fall in a specific set of criteria for tuning options on this access port. So mainly what this big change did is it removed the ability for tuners to be able to deactivate check engine lights, change things that are emissions related and things of that nature, which are going to be O2 sensors, TGVs, EGR systems, EVAP, EGTs, catalytic converters, secondary air pumps, and then the ability for speed density right now. So that creates some issues for some people out there. Now for the people that are still planning on doing basic bolt-on parts to make 500-ish wheel horsepower, whatever your target goal is, it's still very viable to do. You just have to retain those emissions control devices in your car. TGVs are not going to be the end of the world if you have to run your stock TGVs. Are they going to be a restriction in flow? Yes, but you can still make power running TGVs. Same with EGRs and things of that nature. Just because you have to run these emissions devices now doesn't mean that your car cannot make power and that you cannot continue to modify your car. Now, some of the general questions I've been getting, because my DM box has been bombarded by questions, so I'm going to try to answer all the general questions I've been getting. If you already have a tune on your access port that has deleted emissions things on it, this does not affect you at all until you go to get a retune. If you decide not to get a retune at any point, you decide to continue to rock the tune that you have and the setup that you have on the car, your tune is totally fine. Your access port doesn't automatically connect to Wi-Fi, and they don't like wipe your tunes or anything like that. Just don't plug the access port in and do not do any of the updates to the access port. Just leave it as it is. Can you still e-tune with these? You can still 100% e-tune with access ports. You just have to have your emissions devices in the car. That's the big thing that this is pushing, is emissions devices. That just means no more TGV deletes, no more EGR deletes, things of that nature, if you are tuning on access tuner in the access port. I mentioned this at the beginning of the video. The one that really irks a lot of people, and it irks me too, it doesn't affect me, but it's just really shitty about how Cobb went about it, is the ethanol kits. So Cobb discontinued their ethanol kits. I want to say it was about a month and a half to 2 months ago or something along those lines. People obviously bought these ethanol kits, and not everybody who buys them immediately installs them immediately and goes and gets tuned. What most of us do is we buy bulk parts, we install bulk parts when we go to do our build, then we go get tuned. So to continue selling ethanol kits prior to shutting down is really shitty. Now, if you still want to run ethanol with an access port, you still can. You do not need the ethanol sensor in the whole Cobb kit at this point. What you're gonna have to do if you do want to run E85 or whatever E-blend tune you're gonna be running, is you have to have 2 tunes on the car now. The whole point of the flex fuel sensor is to like decipher what the ethanol percentage is in the fuel before it gets injected into the engine. Without an ethanol sensor, you now have to run a tune dedicated to E85. So you can still run your E60, your E70, your E80, whatever it is, you just have to have a second tune for it, which means that you would just have to swap tunes in the access port to your E85 tune when you do decide to go E85. Unfortunately, those flex fuel kits are essentially paperweights at this point. The whole reason that Cobb doesn't support the ethanol kits anymore, a lot of people think it's like the government or things like that. It's not the fuel type. They don't care about that. The thing with the ethanol kits that becomes a problem is the fact that the ethanol sensor pulls its signal ground, and signal power from the TGV connector. Because these ethanol kits are pulling all of this information and I don't want to say recrypting, but redistributing the information from a TGV harness to the ECU means that it is tampering with emissions things. I know Cobb is working on getting a compliant ethanol sensor out at some point. From what I heard, maybe it sounds like it's going to be an IO expander, which is an input-output expander to a stock ECU, and maybe it'll pull power from somewhere else in the system. I'm not 100% sure on that. But you can still run E85, you just have to have 2 tunes. Those ethanol kits, unfortunately, are kind of pointless unless you're going open source tuning at that point, because you're just changing the AVI input in the ECU to become a flex fuel sensor versus a TGV input. And who knows, maybe Cobb will offer something in the future like they did with their V2 to V3 access port program, where when you go to get the newest one, you can trade in your old one to get money off of the new one. I don't know. Honestly, in my opinion, the best thing for Cobb to do is just refund people on the ethanol sensors if they're still brand new in box, and just go that route, but that's up to Cobb to decide. Now, I get a lot of questions about what parts you can and cannot run. So, to give a quick breakdown, yes, you can still do external wastegates, you can still do boost controllers, intakes, catted downpipes, injectors, fuel pressure regulators, intercoolers, larger turbos, turbo inlets, headers, fuel rails, bypass valves, fuel pumps, AOS catch cans, etc. This doesn't limit what you can continue to put on your car. All this is limiting is what you can take off of it. You can still add parts on, you just can't take anything off. So you can still get your E-tune with your headers, your boost controller, your intake, your downpipe, your injectors, your fuel pressure regulator, your fuel pumps, whatever it is you're going to be doing. Even if you have like an FP Blue, a Cobb 20G, an FP Green, whatever the turbo may be. Now, the difficult part with larger turbos now is trying to get the turbo to fit with TGV housings. That has always been an issue in the past with some of these larger turbos, is trying to squeeze them in around the TGVs, because you have the TGV motor that comes off the TGV housing that can now get in the way. So I don't know every turbo that's TGV housing friendly out there, but you can still run larger turbos and things of that nature. You just can't take anything out of the way to be able to do so. Now let's talk about ECU Tech for a minute, because ECU Tech is one. I was suggesting ECU Tech. I've used ECU Tech in the past and I've liked ECU Tech. However, ECU Tech and Cobb are owned by the same parent company, which I believe is Autometer. Because Cobb and ECU Tech are both owned by the same parent company, it's come to light that ECU Tech will be following suit as Cobb in the future. We just don't know at what point. So I would suggest avoiding ECU Tech if you're gonna be tuning, because you're gonna find yourself in the same boat that you're in now with Cobb if you go to try to redo tunes or remap things in the future with ECU Tech. As a short-term thing, it might be all right. Long-term, I wouldn't suggest using ECU Tech. Another option. Before Cobb, we were tuning Subarus. After Cobb, we'll be tuning Subarus. The access port is not the only way to tune a Subaru. If you know what one of these are, you get brownie points. This is called a Tactrix cable. It essentially plugs into the OBD2 port of your car. The other end is just USB and it plugs into a laptop. Now what you'd be doing with something like a Tactrix cable is called open source tuning. Open source tuning uses programs like ROM Raider, Carberry, things of that nature, and it allows the user to be able to tune whatever they want. Now an easy way to think about this is think of it like Cobb is Apple. They don't want you doing things in their software without their permission or without allowing you to do them. Open source tuning is like Windows and Microsoft. It gives you all of the ability to be able to decode open source and do whatever the hell you want. Now here's the thing with open source tuning. If a tuner can tune on an access port, they should be able to tune with open source. Open source, as archaic as it sounds, Cobb did a really good job of putting open source tuning on the back burner because they made the access port so user friendly and so well versed where it was just the go-to for these cars. Now at this point it sounds like we may be going back to open source if you are looking to do things that delete emissions related items and you do not want to swap out your stock ECU. Open source tuning can be a very good option if that's the route you're going towards and you don't want to buy an aftermarket or a standalone ECU, you want to retain the stock ECU and try to tune that. This may be the way for you. Now the access port will still tune. Honestly, I'm gonna say like 60% of your guys' cars without issues, because most people don't delete emissions controlled devices off of their cars because the states that you guys live in don't allow you guys to do so. So with that being said, if you want to delete that stuff and continue using stock ECU, open source may be for you. Like I said, Carberry, ROM Raider, you can ask your tuner what open source platforms they're open to, which ones they use, but any tuner who tunes on Access Tuner should be able to tune on open source, because I guarantee you they were probably tuning on open source before they were tuning on Access Tuners. All right, now let's get into the alternative options for tuning that are a little bit more expensive but give you a lot more free reign. As most of you guys know, I run a standalone on my STI. I have the Haltech Elite 2500 with a universal harness that I wired in for my engine swap. Unfortunately, not every standalone ECU out there has a plug and play option for your car. You guys are gonna have to do a little bit of research into this if you are debating on going standalone ECUs. Standalone ECUs are gonna give you full control over absolutely everything that the car is doing, absolutely everything over what the engine is doing, and allow you to make whatever tuning adjustments that you want. Think of it as the big daddy of open source tuning on a standalone ECU. Now some of the options for Subarus, because we'll talk about Subarus for a minute. Motec is probably going to be the Gucci of standalone ECUs for what you're going to be looking at. They do make a plug and play harness for FA20s and EJ25s on the V8 chassis, which is 2015 and plus. However, it comes at a cost, roughly $7,000 to $8,000 for that standalone. This is not going to be an option that pretty much everybody out there goes to. This is probably going to be for dedicated race cars and people who are going all out on their builds. Now a more affordable option that still has a plug and play feature for most Subarus that I've seen is M-Tron. I have no experience with M-Tron. I've heard good things about it, but they do offer a plug and play option as well for those who are wanting to go standalone. Now for those that are still looking for a standalone with some plug and play options, AEM offers the Infinity ECU with plug and play options for older chassis, specifically GD models. I didn't see anything on their website about 2008 plus, but they could be on there still. If you're looking for another one, Haltech has some plug and play harness adapters for older Subarus as well. From what I've heard through the grapevine, there may be some third-party plug and play adapters for Haltech Elite 2500s for VA chassis coming out in the near future. I recommend Haltech. I think Haltech's a fantastic option if you are debating on going standalone. I personally have been learning to tune through my Haltech. It's a fantastic option. Next up is Fuel Tech. A lot of Fuel Tech's a newer one that's come out recently. They don't have any plug and play options for Subarus yet, but it seems like the market may be pushing them to start doing some plug and play options. And then the other recommendation is Link ECU. They have plug and play options from what I've seen for older chassis where you actually open up your older ECU, take out the motherboard, put in the new one, and then plug everything back in. So there are options out there for standalones if that is the route that you do decide to go. But like I said, for most people out there, this is still going to be a viable option for you. I know Cobb may have just left a really dirty taste in your mouth, like you just ate a big old bag of olives and then gargled it down with some anchovies. Dude, that sounds disgusting actually. I don't like either of those. We've been tuning Subaru, people have been tuning Subarus long before Cobb was around. People will still be tuning Subarus long after Cobb is gone if something ever happened to Cobb. Just remember, this is not the only option to be able to tune cars. You can still another question I got was, can you e-tune on standalones? Yes, you can still e-tune on standalones. Cobb is a very rudimentary style of tuning that's been made very user-friendly. Every other tuning, you can e-tune with open source tuning as well. You get a ROM file, it works all the same. Instead of an access port, you just plug your laptop directly into the ECU. You just plug your laptop into your Tactrix cable. It's all the same. It all works the same. It's just, instead of having just a screen middleman interface, you eliminate this and you just go straight to this and use your computer. So I hope this answers some of your guys' questions, helps clear the air on some of it. Like I said, it's extremely shitty of the way that Cobb went about doing all of this. It's very disrespectful to how they just dirtied their tuners out there, all their Cobb certified pro tuners, by not giving them any heads up or advance that this is going to be happening. But from what I've heard, Cobb's going to be trying to do some more compliant, EPA friendly stuff. Just keep in mind, if Cobb didn't do this, they would have gone out of business also, because they would have just been getting hit by fines by the EPA, and those fines add up really quick. So I hope this answers your guys' questions. We will still push forward with all of our tuning aspects of things. We'll just use alternative methods if it comes down to it. The access port is still going to get most of you guys by. You just have to keep your emissions related stuff. If you're building your car and you're mid-build and you've already deleted some of the emission stuff, you either gonna have to go open source or put your emission stuff back on. It's really up to you guys. But I hope I genuinely hope this helps answer some of your guys' questions and kind of help put some of you guys at ease about this stuff. So that's all I got for you guys on this one. If you like the video, you know what to do. Go ahead and hit the like button, turn it black, blue, green, yellow, purple, silver, cyan, whatever color it turns for you. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel and you want to be, one of these corners, no idea which one I'll put it in quite yet, but that car should be still golden. New intake manifold shows up tomorrow, so I'm very excited for that one. But anyways, peace out, homies. Woo!